Hey, so I want to talk about something that if you haven't followed New Wave Feminists for a long time, or even, since 2016, you probably won't be interested in it all, so don't watch this video. But something came up recently where the Daily Caller interviewed people at the Women's Convention and asked them specifically about my group being left out of the Women's Convention. And there was this one woman who said, I strongly disagreed with them being left out, and then she had heard from some of the organizers that, New Wave Feminists has really done a lot of work, or she said, had a lot of work done. So either that, which I haven't, I don't look like I've had that done, so I'm assuming she means that, we've kind of transitioned, which is very, very true. We are not the same group that we were a year ago. I think I'm the same person I was a year ago, but even that, honestly, I'm not sure. So this is kind of just like a real talk, where we're at, where the group has been, because a lot of you have been following us for a long time, and I certainly don't want you to think that, we've derailed or anything. But most of you know, for 7 years, 7 out of the last 12, 13 that New Wave Feminists has been around, Kristen Hatton ran the group with me. Was my best friend, and, I adore her. I still do. She decided that, okay, well, first of all, let me back up. Before the election, she was pretty anti-Trump. We kind of both talked about it on New Wave Feminist a bit. And then after the election happened, she had a change of heart and started, agreeing with Trump. And so anyway, it was something I was like, we'll work through. I don't know if you guys remember, we posted a picture where she was pretending to drink out of a bottle of wine and I was drinking out of a bottle of bleach, and we were drowning our sorrows. And so she became pro-Trump, but more than that, she actually wanted to take the group in a direction that was more of an agitator. She wanted to kind of do the Ann Coulter Milo type thing, and that's never been my bag. But I love Kristen, and so I wanted us to do that, and we've done funny videos in the past that have been satirical and mocking, and I feel like that was kind of getting my toe into that whole, using condescension as a form of influence and persuasion. But if I'm being really honest, I've always been a bleeding heart, always. Even back when I was kind of more conservative, I consider myself a bleeding heart conservative. And I would even say I was conservative because I was pro-life. And you're told that if you're pro-life, you have to be conservative. I'm consistent life. I've always had the view, been anti-death penalty, and I'm anti-unjust war and anti-torture and all of these things that are more progressive, right? But life is the very first one. So just chronologically speaking, that's the one that I kind of was like, this is the most innocent and vulnerable members of the human family. So if I'm going to be pro-life, then I have to be a conservative. And I've fallen into that camp for most of my life. And I've also thought, maybe I can be the change that I want to see in the Conservative Party, that they can look at the full spectrum of issues. Now that said, once I kind of joined the pro-life movement and I began, I started, so I don't know if a lot of you know this, New Wave Feminist started over a restaurant that went up in town that had this really kind of graphic billboard of 2 women rubbing their boobs together. And it was right off the highway, and it really pissed me off. It pissed me off the fact that women were being used to sling hot wings, and that my children were growing up seeing images of women this way, that this is what they are, that they're decorations, right? And so I put together this hodgepodge group of about 3 or 4 women, and I took it to city council, and I went to the restaurant itself, and I was like, we're going to protest you and all this, and I went to the actual building that had the billboard above it, and was threatening, and I was like, we'll probably sound like a more official group if we have a name. What will we be like? New Wave Feminists, that sounds like a name, right? And so we write this strongly worded letter, and we're going to plan a protest. And then the business that had the billboard actually ends up modifying the billboard. So then we didn't have to do any of that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. That still felt really good. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being able to make change happen. And there's power in numbers. More than just me being somebody who felt strongly about something, it was cool to have this collective and this sisterhood. And so I've always, since my own teen pregnancy, felt very passionate about pro-life issues. I saw so many women who chose abortion because they didn't feel like they had any other options. They were going to be kicked out of the home. They didn't have medical care, things like that will really scare a pregnant teenager. I was lucky enough to have those resources, but I know a lot of women aren't. And so while I'd always been passionate about that, the more that I got into my feminism and started kind of realizing this culture I had been brought up in, this cosmo culture of, here's 20 pages of glossy women you're never going to look like. Here's 20 pages of shit you can buy so you can attempt to look like these beautiful women who are airbrushed. They don't even look like that, but whatever. We're going to ignore that part. Oh, and then if you can never be that pretty, now that we've completely broken you as a human, here's 20 pages of sex tricks so that someone will still love you. Like, that mentality was my feminism for a really long time. It's what led to a teen pregnancy. It's what led to a lot of promiscuity. I mean, I was doing like naughty schoolgirl competitions and crap like that, you guys. Like, that was something that I thought was empowering, but then I found that after I participated in my own exploitation, I felt really gross and it wasn't empowering. And so when I look at all these things together, I realize that abortion's not just this one issue. It slowly gets fed into by all of these other things of women just feeling that they are objects and that they're not worthy. And so when you do exploit yourself, or even if you're in a loving relationship and become pregnant and you're not ready to be a parent, here's the funny thing. Now that I have had subsequent pregnancies while being married, while having a house and a husband and these other things, you never feel ready. You never feel like you're enough. You're always terrified. You always feel like you're going to be the crappiest parent in the world. Jury's still out on that. I don't know. I mean, you'll have to ask my kids. You feel that anyway, but then having this societal strain on top of it that tells you you're not good enough from an age that is very, very young, I think that plays into abortion, in my opinion. And so I knew that I wanted New Wave Feminists to be a part of all of that. And, whether it was subconscious or not, when I picked the word New Wave, I knew that I wanted to be a new wave in the feminist movement, but I also really wanted to be a new wave in the pro-life movement. I hated Operation Rescue. I hated the way that I saw them. I felt like being really aggressive and abrasive in their tactics and the graphic images and all that. That is a belief that I have held from the jump. And then, as I got into the pro-life movement, I met Troy Newman, and I consider him a friend. He's a nice enough guy. I still can disagree with some of the tactics that he uses or some of these groups use, but and maybe it's growing up in the South. My grandfather always said, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And I try to do that. I try to disagree and stand firm in my opinions without being disagreeable. So anyway, I started New Wave Feminist. We definitely were accepted more by the pro-life movement than we were by the feminist movement. These days, sometimes that almost feels like it's kind of switched, which is interesting to say the least. And so once I was in the pro-life movement, there's a lot of stuff that, it's funny because we always talk about the feminist starter kit, right? Like, you have to be pro-choice. You have to subscribe to this, this, and this, and you can't challenge any of it. Well, there's kind of a pro-life starter kit too. And it's very much that you have to be a part of the GOP. You have to, work effortlessly to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I don't know. I guess after years of being in that and accepting that for what it was, that this is just how it had to be, I feel like there might be a better way. I could be wrong, but I feel like there might be a better way. I feel like all of the money that we spend on legislation and getting these politicians on just one side, we only focus on one side of politicians to be pro-life enough. Not even like pro-life as we want them to be, but at least just be kind of pro-life, you guys. Like, we put a lot of effort into that, right? We put a lot of effort tearing down politicians who aren't pro-life enough. And effort means money. We put a lot of money into this. We pass these bills that are or attempt to pass these bills that are very extreme, that get shot down. And then you have litigation that goes on where pro-life money ends up going to pay, like, Planned Parenthood's legal team that's working on this. I feel like there might be a better way. I feel like there might be a better use of our resources. I do believe in the free market. I believe that, Planned Parenthood is is good at what they do. They're good at marketing. They've branded themselves very well. They've created a chain that if you talk to the women who actually go there, sometimes it's subpar care. It's not even that great, but a lot of women are under the impression that they have a monopoly. And to some extent, it feels like they do. It feels like there aren't a lot of other options. Federally qualified health centers are not necessarily up on the same level as Planned Parenthood. So could you imagine if there was a pro-life version of that, of a resource center that was non-religious, that offered all of the same services sans abortion? I mean, that would actually give them some competition. That, in my opinion, would be a better way of, taking down an organization that you disagree with than protesting them and trying to get them caught up in all of this, bureaucratic tape constantly, because I myself am an uninsured woman. I cannot afford health care. If we added me to my family's health insurance plan, so my husband and my kids are already on a health insurance plan, you add me, the plan doubles. It becomes our highest bill. Like, that's not affordable for a regular middle class paycheck to paycheck family. It's just not. And so this is something I care about, and I am very empathetic to women who just need health care. They just need somewhere to go for a well woman exam. I can't remember the last time I had one. So then when Planned Parenthood comes along and says, hey, we'll give you one, I can see a lot of women not really looking much deeper than that, not realizing that it's a lot of government grants and subsidies that are actually providing that service, but thinking that Planned Parenthood is their savior. I get that. Again, that's the bleeding heart part of me. That's the empathetic part of me that does try to see things from another perspective. So anyway, back to kind of where New Wave Feminists is at. I guess it was probably the end of November, I think, or the beginning of December. That's when Kristen decided to go ahead and part ways with the group. And publicly, we made it look very amicable. It was heartbreaking, if I'm being honest. It was really difficult. But she had started writing some blogs on her own personal page that, in my opinion, did not line up with New Wave Feminist values whatsoever and this vision I had cast. But it hurt, man. It hurt to have my best friend of the last 7 years, to have to ask her to step down from an organization that we were having a blast running together. But that's the truth, and that's where it's at, and it gets messy. And at the end of the day, I just know we had to stay on mission. And the vision that I have for this group is that we will love women well. And we will help them. And we might not be funny anymore. We might not make funny, sarcastic videos. But I also kind of realized that there was a limit to how much those could actually help people. Because when you're being condescended to, it works. Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, they have a great audience. But it also works on people who maybe don't want to put in the intellectual fortitude. Would that be the right word? The time into actually thinking through an issue. I want those people. I want the people who we actually get to think about the issue of abortion when it relates to feminism. Yes, we have the right to an abortion, but is it actually good for women? And are there women who have abortions who regret them now? That it's not helpful in their case to just push abortion on them. We need to be making sure that they understand they have access to help and resources, right? That's always been our message. So I want to get people who are willing to look at that. And that might mean we have a smaller audience. I don't know. But I do know that the whole, being mean-spirited and mocking, it feels like it's taken its course. So we're in a new place now. We're in a place where we do really want to genuinely reach out to the other side. The irony is that now it feels like the pro-life side is also the other side. We're in this weird middle ground where, neither movement really likes us. And that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. I actually feel like that's maybe exactly where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be pushing both of these movements to be better and to understand human dignity of the woman and of the child. And so anyway, that's just some backstory about everything that's kind of gone on over the last year. Our vision is not different. Our mission is not different. Some of our tactics are different. Now that I'm pretty much, running it on my own with Cecily, and Cecily, oh my gosh, she's she's the coolest. I know you guys already love her, but she has added a whole other layer to where our outreach needs to be focusing and where our activism needs to be focusing. And it's stuff that I was familiar with before, but her passion that she brings to it is just so cool. I mean, it is definitely something that I think is going to take New Wave Feminists to completely different levels. So anyway, all that to say, went to the Women's Convention this weekend in Detroit. It was such an amazing time. It was an amazing experience, just like the Women's March was an amazing experience. It's one of those things where it's like, I feel like I need to be there. We need to be there. Like, our voices need to be there because there is so much common ground. And I'll wrap this up now because this is now a 15-minute video. Sorry about that. By the way, I said it, I warned you that you weren't going to care unless you followed us for a long time. Last night as I was sitting at the airport waiting for my flight, I ended up getting there early, and a lot of you know, like, I'm sober now, and so I am used to drinking at airports. It's what I do. I don't think I've ever not drank at an airport, but I had a few hours to kill, and so I was reading through my recovery book, and a woman walked up and asked if I had been to the Women's Convention because she saw my bag. And this is a woman who, within the first 3 minutes, had already used the term anti-choice a couple times. So I knew she didn't agree with me, but I also knew that both of us had an amazing experience at the Women's Convention, and there were a lot of things that we did agree on. And so we talked about all of these awesome panels that we were able to watch, and all of these like team building exercises and workshops we were able to take part of, because a lot of the conference was interactive, where you find other people locally that you can work with, and it really was about building power and keeping the momentum going from the Women's March and activating women who have a problem with something, but they don't necessarily know how to do something about it. And so that's what this convention, I mean, did a wonderful job of really kind of making that a tangible reality to a lot of women. So we're sitting there talking all about that, and now about 30 minutes has gone by, and I told her, I just said, look, I can't remember, she had asked something because I had mentioned I had done an interview, and she was like, oh, why would did that? And I said, this is the part where you're not going to like me. And she goes, well, I don't know about that. And I said, no, I mean, you are, because she had already talked about the protesters, the anti-choice protesters and all of that. And I said, I'm actually the one who runs the group that was removed as a sponsor from the Women's March back in January. And, you know, because we're pro-life. And she goes, oh, I didn't like that they did that. And it was just, I mean, she goes, I didn't agree with that. I thought that y'all should have been there. And I don't dislike you. We all have different opinions. Hey, we're women. We're not all going to fit into one category. We're not all going to think the same things on everything. As long as we agree on most of the stuff, that's what matters. And it was just like, it was no big deal. And I thought that was so cool. And I ended up talking to her for probably 2 hours, which those are 2 hours where I would have really been white knuckling it at the airport trying not to go to the bar. And instead, I wasn't. I was having an awesome conversation about the heart of my feminism and the mission of New Wave Feminist, and it was just really cool. It was really cool, and it was a great reminder, and it was a great kind of wrap up for this weekend, that there is so much common ground that we have. We just have to be willing to stand on it and extend an olive branch. That's all we have to do. We have to put down bullhorns, we have to put down signs, and we have to talk to people because they are willing to talk. They know that their side's not perfect either, and they know that there's a lot of places where we can come together and help women make life-affirming, nonviolent choices. They know that. So anyway, that's it. There wasn't some big climactic moment where I like slam my hands down and that is New Wave Feminism, but that's New Wave Feminism, guys. So anyway, I don't even know where I'm going to put this video. Maybe just on YouTube so that y'all don't have to be forced to watch it on our Facebook. But that's where we're at. That's where we've been. That's where we are now. I'm super excited about the future, y'all. I think something amazing's happening, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I think we're going to change the world. And I'm really kind of psyched about that.